Okay, so hello, I'm Lara.
I'm Chad.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm Andrew.
And our project looks at the impacts of growing finfish aquaculture industry on surrounding ecosystems, and we explore some possible solutions to the issues that arise. As we go through, we'd like you to consider whether this seems like a sustainable industry or one that's going to be detrimental to marine ecosystems. First off, let's talk a little bit about what finfish aquaculture is specifically and how it's practiced today. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the term aquaculture, but in the case of our project, we'll be looking at the captive farming of finfish. So examples of finfish include salmon, cod, tilapia, trout, and other fish with fins, if you can imagine. As the world's population keeps growing, aquaculture has become increasingly more popular as a way to decrease stress on wild fish populations. Although aquaculture is a relatively young industry, its production potential is huge. The figure to the right is pulled from a Nature, Ecology, and Evolution article up here, in which the authors mapped the global potential for aquaculture. Using Australia as an example over here, we can see that the current, production is 1 to 500,000 tons annually, and its potential is well over 16 million tons. So there is a lot of potential there. Currently, most aquaculture facilities use open net pens and ponds as methods of containment and are typically located in coastal waters and wetlands. A less popular but slowly emerging method for aquaculture is the use of recirculating systems that filter the wastewater and then reintroduce it to large tanks in which the fish are stored. In terms of ecological threats, we see three main issues arise. The first two are simply a result of maintaining these high density fish populations that need food and habitat. Feeding these fish often results in the overfishing of smaller species like herring, and providing them with habitat often either destroys the given habitat or will exclude naturally occurring species. As you can imagine, these fish also produce large amounts of waste as well as a lot of excess uneaten food, which are all deposited onto the seafloor and then present an opportunity for eutrophication.
So to evaluate the impacts of finfish aquaculture, we're going to look at 4 different spatial and temporal scales. It's important to note, though, that there is a heavy overlap between these scales as the ecosystems are dynamic. So first we have internal impacts, which affect the immediate environment on scales of a few hundred meters and minutes. The key impact here is oxygen depletion or hypoxia, as the rate of oxygen consumption of the farmed fish is not in balance with the oxygen replenishment coming from the new water entering the system via ocean currents. Local impacts affect the surrounding area of the fish farm with scales on the order of a kilometer or so and can range from several minutes to a full tidal cycle. The main impact here is benthic deposition, as all the fecal matter and unconsumed food end up on the seafloor and trap the detritus. This leads to chemical changes in the sediment, including things like hypoxia and anaerobic process dominance. Moving on to the next slide, we'll look at the regional impacts.
Sorry, it won't let me change slides now. There we go.
Okay. So the regional impacts affect the larger body of water on the scale of many kilometers and can range from anywhere from a single tidal cycle to an entire season. And at this scale, eutrophication is the main impact, as the excess nutrients that are being injected into the system can contaminate the larger body of water as it naturally circulates. This can cause widespread algal blooms, which can block the sunlight and deplete oxygen, as well as even being toxic. Finally, there's the global and long-term impacts. So finfish aquaculture relies on fish meal made from smaller pelagic fish. And as fishing is a global market, this overexploitation of other resources and smaller fish is continuing to grow as the world's population and demand for seafood is also growing. So overall, the natural environments just aren't able to keep up with and properly absorb all the waste that's being produced by finfish aquaculture. And this is leading to imbalances of organic and inorganic chemicals, disruptions that can cause dominating organisms, and unsustainable oxygen and nutrient availability. And while this may inherently allow some species to thrive, the overall marine ecosystem becomes unstable and less conducive to a productive environment.
All right, so now that we've had a comprehensive overview of the impacts associated with finfish aquaculture, I'll now be talking about the past and present in regards to this topic. So over the past decades, the feeding has actually changed in finfish aquaculture, where in the past they used waste, byproducts, and natural food as the primary nutrient sources. They presently use agro-industrially manufactured feed, and this is basically processed food pellets for the finfish. And this does have harmful effects on the nearby environment, such as fish species loss, reduced water quality, and other deficits that are associated with the aforementioned eutrophication. And moving on to the next slide, we will be discussing this case study and specifically mangrove forests in Southeast Asia. So just to go over some further background information, finfish aquaculture puts coastal ocean environments at risk, and damages to the ocean include waste disposal, habitat destruction, pathogen invasions, and ecosystem services that are at risk are coastal protection, water filtration, flood control, and more. And this does have human impacts associated with it, as well as like environmental impacts. As you can see on the right, there's actually a figure that shows intensive aquaculture ponds in Indonesia. And these are actually resting where mangrove forest habitats once existed. So this is clearly a problem because without these mangroves, these communities will be more susceptible to environmental catastrophes, such as rising sea levels and tsunamis.
So finfish aquaculture needs to significantly alter its trajectory to handle growing food demands as well as increased environmental strain. On a local level, British Columbia's Minister of Agriculture's Advisory Council on Finfish Aquaculture recommended strengthening precautionary regulations to reduce the risk to fish, as well as better spatial planning, more First Nations and community involvement, as well as adopting newer technologies and methodologies, along with more research into pathogens and sea lice. So 3 possible improvements for local fisheries include its culture system, feed strategies, and species selection. Increasing the implementation of recirculating aquaculture systems is one way to improve it. RAS reduces land and water usage due to the water being recycled back in, while also promoting healthy fish and also decreasing eutrophication. New feed strategies revolve around finding a viable commercial replacement of fish meal and fish oil, such as animal products and plant proteins. Another method involves recycling of processing waste into viable food sources, as well as the use of rendered animal products such as meat and bone meal. Due to climate change and other environmental factors, selective breeding has become more popular due to increased growth rates or seed resistance, and therefore increasing fish output. So on a global scale, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations recommended possible policy opportunities such as encouraging the implementation of better technology, matching the transformation of the industry towards cleaner, sustainable practices, in addition to increasing awareness of how crucial fisheries are to the food supply. Fisheries around the world must also respect these new policies that allow aquaculture to become less intrusive towards the environment, and fisheries should also develop better spatial management mechanism to better combat shifts in species distribution. Next slide. So these sustainable practices really need to be held up consistently for the entire global industry to grow, change, and adapt. Countries and communities all over the world need to take action to secure their future food supply as well as the health of the global ecosystem. Thank you.